Thank you for joining us. Please welcome the panel to the stage.
Hello, everyone. I'm Holly Freistadt. I'm the Senior Director for Feeding Change at the Milken Institute. Feeding Change uses social and financial capital to create a more sustainable, resilient, equitable, and nutritious food system. I am just elated to have such a phenomenal panel here today to talk about the future of food retail. So I would like to start with my left. Jason Beekall is the CEO of Whole Foods. Nancy Dalton is the Director of Amazon Access, External Affairs, Marketing, and Social Impact for Amazon. Rodney McMullen is the Chairman and CEO of the Kroger Company. And Leslie Saracen is the President and CEO for FMI, the Food Industry Association. So today we're going to talk about the rapidly changing of food retail and what the future holds. Food retail has had traumatic transformations over the last 4 years since COVID. So I really want to center this conversation about we saw significant disruptions of the food supply chain. We saw the fragility of our food system. Yet at the same time, we saw extraordinary innovation and growth and a range of a new retail environment, ranging from home delivery, acceleration of long overdue resources that we've always wanted to see, such as online SNAP. But we really did see this moment in time in food retail where we saw this magnificent transition and also many challenges we've had to overcome. So what we're going to talk about first is kind of setting the scene of what the current food retail environment looks like, where we are now, and what the future holds. And this is all in context of how do we create a more sustainable, resilient food system, and what is the role of the food retailer. And to be honest, we are all customers, consumers, and our role here too. So with this, one thing I've learned is that retail is very dependent on us as consumers, right? We are the heart of food retail. So one of the trends that we saw that emerged during COVID is all of our perspectives on health and wellness. We've changed. We've changed as a result of COVID, and as a result, the food retail industry has changed with us. So Leslie, I'm going to start with you. As President and CEO of FMI, can you talk about the changing trends of the consumer? How is the food retail industry at large responding to their priorities, to our priorities, related to health values and the increased interest in food, health, and wellness?
Well, thank you, Holly, and it's a pleasure to be with all of you today. Let me start by saying that the consumer is at the center of everything that happens at food retail. What Holly said earlier is absolutely correct. This industry has always been and will always be concerned about what customers want and need and what they're trying to achieve for themselves and their families. And so I am proud to be able to represent an industry that is as focused as it is on its customer base. I think what we saw during the pandemic was a lot of change, but I think even though we went through a lot of change, our customers went through a lot of change, I don't know that we behaved that differently than we normally do, because we changed, but we always change when our customers are looking for something new and different. And I think what we understand now is that we're dealing with a consumer that is very value focused. At FMI, we do a tremendous amount of research, and what we're trying to learn is as much as we can about the changing needs of consumers so that companies like the ones represented here who are members of ours will be able to make their own determinations as to how they're going to respond. And what we have seen, I think, is that the customer's perception of value for many years was really about price, convenience, and taste. And if you could meet those three things, you sort of had a sale, you had it made. That's all been turned upside down now. Value takes into account so many other issues than just those three original ones that we sort of focused on for so many years. So now our customers are thinking about health and well-being. They're thinking about how this fits, what they're purchasing fits into their family's health and disease state needs. They're thinking about sustainability and whether the products that they're going to be buying in a store, and indeed whether the store where they're shopping shares their values when it comes to sustainability. So there's an awful lot happening, a lot of changes with the customer, and I think the beautiful thing about the food retail sector is that it is so responsive to that change, which is not an easy thing to do in a business that traditionally has operated on low single-digit profit margins. So a lot of change going on among our customers, and as a result, change is happening in our companies to respond.
So Leslie, FMI released a report relatively recently on wellness, health, and well-being. Mm-hmm. And in that report, it talked about how our trends have changed, that we are purchasing more perishable products, we're purchasing more grab and go, and that we are seeing, and please, I would love to hear a little bit more of how, like all of us here, we all know what we want to eat, what we think we eat, and then what we actually eat, right? But this group here knows the collective. They know like the big trends of what we actually are eating. And so have you seen in sort of this consumer, I would say, transition towards healthier products in so many ways, are you seeing that in the industry?
Yes and no.
All right.
Yes, I think what we hear from our customers on a regular basis is that they want to eat healthier. They want to be able to have access to foods that are better for them. And I think that's particularly true if they are trying to address a disease state for themselves or a member of their family. So being able to access it, doing so conveniently, and with the least amount of friction, I think is sort of top of the list. I'm not sure that we eat as healthy as we say we do, and the data would show that that is absolutely what's happening. We talk a good game, but we don't always carry through the way we I'm sure intend to. But I think overall there is much more focused on health and well-being. And one of the things that we've learned in our research is that when we ask consumers who's on their side and who's not on their side when it comes to health and well-being for themselves and their families, food retailers are always right at the top of the list with doctors, friends, and family. So retailers, in fact, are working to try to meet their customers' needs in the health and well-being space and are perceived as doing so as well.
Great. Thank you, Leslie. So one of these trends that we are seeing in food retail is that healthcare is becoming more central and more a part of our food retail environment. We see 2/3 of food retailers have pharmacies, 82% employ registered dietitians, and we have seen this expansion of this care team sitting within our food retail stores. So Rodney, Kroger is a leader in the retail healthcare space through Kroger Health, the healthcare division. Speak to us about the changing trend we're seeing in retail to help people live healthier lives through being an access point for healthcare. Can you share with us how Kroger is engaging around food as medicine? And also related to your associates, but also related to OptUp. Like, what are these different tools that you're providing within Kroger to help us access health from the pharmacist, registered dietitian, care teams, and food?
Well, I'm a diehard baseball fan, and it's one of those things where I think we're in the first inning. We're just getting started. And the one thing that I would add to Leslie's list that the customers tell us is convenience is also equally as important. And if you look at, most people, their access to health, primary health care and things like that, there's a huge shortage in that. So when you look at our pharmacists, our nutritionists, and other dietitians, those are people that are giving customers access to soft health care. And if you look, you asked about OptUp, and what we have found is if you help people know what they're eating, they will modify. You can nudge. Now, if you try to get somebody to go from eating ice cream to broccoli, it ain't going to happen. But we are easily able to help somebody find an ice cream that's a little bit better for them. And OptUp is really about, if you're worried about salt, if you're worried about sugar and some of those aspects, how do you find other foods that you'll like equally as well, that will be a little bit healthier for you?
How does OptUp work? So is it on my phone? Is it a tag, a shelf label? How do I know how to make the easier choice a healthier choice?
It's on the Kroger app, and it just takes whatever you buy, and it will score it nutritionally, and it will tell you. And if you go onto it, if you bought Oreo cookies, if you click on it, it will give you a red, and it will score it between 0 and 100. And then I think Oreos is like 10 or something. I guess there is some nutritional value to it. And it will give you alternative cookies that might not likely a cookie's going to score anything over a 30 or 40. Yogurt is the one that most people are surprised with. If you look at yogurt, a lot of yogurts have a lot of sugar. There's other yogurts that are much better for you, and you can have huge swings in that. But it really is trying to be transparent and trying to share the data with the customer so they can make their decision. And my wife and I, we laugh about our opt-op score because we were always about 70, and then when COVID hit, we started buying things for my parents and now my mother. And my mother, she figures at 88, you eat what you want. My opt-op score is not nearly as good as it used to be.
So picking up on this theme of making the easier choice the healthier choice, or the healthier choice the easier choice, however you want to say it. Nancy, you wrote a phenomenal Power of Ideas, so congratulations. That has been published at Global Conference this year. And one of your key themes I would love for you to expand upon is, what is convenience equity? And how is Amazon making the healthier choice the easier choice?
Absolutely. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you. Convenience equity is about making sure that everyone, regardless of your socioeconomic state, has access to everyday essentials. And food is an everyday essential. If you do get a chance to read the article, the focus is on some of the things that happened during COVID that have leveled the playing field, if you will. And so one of those areas is online SNAP. And I talk about this a lot. I'm really passionate about it. The fact of the matter is, prior to 2019, if you were a recipient of food stamps, you actually could not use those benefits online. And so when you think about going into the pandemic with that situation, that was a really difficult experience, particularly for those who are most vulnerable among us to navigate. And so now the fact that we do have online SNAP, and it's a nationwide program, it allows you the opportunity to actually get your groceries delivered to your door, the same as any one of us would do. And I think the other piece of that is, if you consider that experience where you are, with your kids, taking 2 or 3 buses to get to the nearest grocery store, now I don't have to do that. I can do it from the comfort of my home. And that gives me more time savings and the opportunity to spend quality time with my family and my kids. And I think this piece around making the healthier choice the easier choice, I'm always about, what are the incentives for us to eat healthy, right? It's very challenging to figure out what to eat. And to your point, Rodney, it's about, how do I do that in the most convenient manner possible? And so some of the ways that we're doing that is through nutrition incentives, where, let's say you spend $10 on fruits and vegetables, you get another $10 to spend on fruits and vegetables. And what you see is people actually engaging in new behaviors. We all know that if I increase my fruit and vegetable intake just 2 servings in a day, that has a huge positive impact on reducing chronic disease. And so I think it's about, to your point, nudging, but doing so in a way that is convenient, and it's meeting the customer where they are. And we're all just getting started. I think we're all in this together, but it's really encouraging to see this movement in the industry.
So the importance here is that online SNAP, or SNAP, actually improves health outcomes. So when we're talking about people who are living with food insecurity, we can correlate that to health outcomes, right? So if we are being able to provide SNAP, we're improving health outcomes. Now, when you put on nutrition incentives, whether it's produce incentives or whatever it may be, it's meaning that people who may not be able to afford those healthier foods will now have an incentive to be able to do so. So when I started this conversation in the introduction, I was talking about accelerating programs that need to happen. So I met Nancy 12 years ago, working on online SNAP. I worked for the city of Baltimore, and I was leading the online SNAP. And 12 years ago, we got the policy passed 12 years ago, and the only reason why it rolled out was because of COVID.
Yes.
Because 2 weeks before COVID, I called to find out the status for Maryland, and they said, oh, it won't be ready for another 2 years. I said, 2 years for online SNAP? And then 2 weeks later, it rolled out because of COVID. So we really did see some acceleration here and sort of prioritization of, well, okay, maybe this is a really important modernization we need to see in technology to be able to get online SNAP. And so what we're seeing here, and we also, Nancy and I work together in the city of Baltimore for the produce incentives, so that if you were to shop online, you could be able to get produce added in as an incentive as you're shopping online to really encourage behavior change. So that if you're shopping online and you might have reluctancy for perishable product and you wouldn't think of going online, you would be able to get this incentive. And this is really part of the precursor we're seeing of food as medicine,
yes.
right? Because now we're getting this technology in place that does allow us to be able to have whatever it may be, produce prescriptions or medically tailored meals or medically tailored groceries, all are part of the food as medicine spectrum, to be able to be a part of the retail environment. So that's just one point I wanted to kind of think through. And Jason, I want to bring you into this conversation. We've talked a lot about personal choice, how individuals, each one of us can choose whether we're an opt-up and we have a nudge or whatever it may be to be able to use online SNAP. But talk to me about Whole Foods. What you're doing is really looking at how you're screening ahead, right? You're looking at your standards, your transparency. Sometimes you ban products or there are banned products, so that when we go into your store, we don't actually have to worry about certain things that we may need to otherwise. So talk to us about sort of the premise behind it and how you're making the healthier choice the easier choice, and what are those strategies in place?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I just want to jump in first to what Nancy was saying, as part of Whole Foods, we are so proud to be part of the program and having our offerings SNAP eligible online as well. So it's even further adding the assortment that can be available for customers. And our team members taking a lot of pride in us being able to offer that as well. But when I think of sort of what customers are looking for from us as Whole Foods, they want products that are good for them, good for the environment, good for the workers that have helped produce those products, and good for the communities where the products have been grown. And one of our jobs is to help make it easy for customers to understand that. So first and foremost, one of the things that's differentiated us is our quality standards. We currently ban over 550 ingredients, many of which are in highly processed foods that consumers eat day in, day out. We also have a higher level of animal welfare standards, sustainable seafood sourcing, and helping to be able to share with customers on how we support the workers and communities. We also have a program called Source for Good. So our goal is that when customers come inside Whole Foods Market or go online, they know that we've done the homework for them. And so they know that the standards we put into place, any product they buy can meet those. And one of our jobs, I believe, is to continue to help raise those standards. So while we first, led the movement of climate-friendly agriculture and organic in the country here starting in 1980 when we opened our first store, we want to push the boundaries further in areas like regenerative agriculture and further finding ways by which we can help transform how products are packaged and what we can do to make sure that we can protect our food systems for future generations.
Great. So we've been talking about the customer, all of us, right? And so staying centered on the customer, let's talk about the desire and what we're seeing in personalization and a curated shopping experience. So Nancy, talk to us about the customer's desire for personalization. What does it look like, and how is a retailer meeting these needs? And can you speak into and define for some who may not understand the terminology of retail media, of how to tap into the value of the customer? And what is the role of technology, and how are we looking at the omnichannel experience?
Yeah, such a really great point, Holly. When we think about just who the customer is, right? The customer is incredibly diverse. When you think about food retail and its beginnings, the nuclear family and how, perhaps they commuted to work and they shopped on the weekends, that's a very different customer than we are today. And I see a lot of nods in the audience, right? And, customers may be coming to food retail for food to go because they are on the go and they are really trying to pick up things that can fit in their life when they're traveling with their kids to various different, after school activities. They could be topping up. They could also be looking for that luxurious meal for the evening at home because they're not perhaps going out to eat as much as they used to, right? So there's a whole host of different reasons why people will come and shop, and they have different shopping missions. And I think the key for all of us as an industry is to understand that and to meet the customer where they are. And when you think about, the channels and the avenues that we have to tap into that, retail media becomes really important. And when you think about retail media, it's simply like that advertising that you will see when you're in the process of purchasing, right? And so it's like looking at the customer journey and figuring out, hey, if I'm coming to shop for a certain product, what else is adjacent for me to really help to drive that convenience and allow me to kind of have a one-shop experience versus having to, go back and forth multiple times throughout the week, right? And I might show up to the grocery store and forget that I actually need something for next week. But now that I'm in the booking path, or I'm purchasing online or I'm purchasing in the store, you're kind of nudging me and telling me, hey, did you think about this other product that you might need? And so I do think that helps with that personalization. It does help you to also learn a little bit more about your consumer. As well. Like, what are the things that are adjacent that go together that make it easier for me to get everything that I need at the time that I need it in the most convenient manner possible. And so the point that you made, Holly, on omnichannel is also really important. Most internet users, when you think about that population of people that are, very engaged in the internet, if you will, 50% of them are shopping groceries online as well. And so like now it's a hybrid situation, right? I'm not just going into the grocery store, the physical store, but I'm also trying to do that in the comfort of my home, all, for that reason that we keep talking about, convenience. And so I want one experience, regardless of how I choose to interact with you. And so it keeps us on our toes and having to understand and anticipate what those needs are. And so I think it's really exciting because the customer is at the center and the heart of what we do, and we have to keep learning from them so that we can discover those white spaces where we can be even more effective and more supportive of the consumer's intent and need.
Thanks, Nancy. So before COVID, we were mostly shopping in stores, right? And then during COVID, for those who could, we're shopping online. And we saw a huge uptake of online shopping, of course, and home delivery, right? And at first, we were all just really excited to have home delivery, like in a few days or a day. But now we demand 1 hour delivery. We demand 2-hour deliveries. Like a day or just a few days is no longer good enough for us. We want it now, and we want it in an hour. And then maybe tomorrow we want something else. And so we have been driving this demand for convenience. And then also we're seeing the changing landscape of all of us as shoppers. Some things we love to shop online. Other things we want to go into the store. Mm-hmm. So the retailers, and Rodney, I'm going to bring you into this, is you're still balancing, like this balancing act of what is e-commerce, how much is your e-commerce, and how much of it is in-store experience. So can you just share with us a little bit about what are we seeing in these trends of this balancing act of the retailers between in-store and online, and how we're balancing e-commerce to the store experience?
It gets back to Nancy's point, and I wouldn't use the word balance. The customer gets to decide.
They do.
And what we find is, depending on what's going on with the customer, sometimes it's easier to shop, on a pickup delivery. Sometimes it's a delivery itself. Sometimes it's in a store. And all we're trying to do is to make it seamless where somebody can bounce back and forth. And everything that we do is we're trying to personalize it for that household and that person. So, Leslie brought up value earlier. Well, we can personalize offers to help somebody stretch their budget for that particular person in terms of what interests them. So, we're not going to try to get you to go from Coke to Pepsi, but if you're a Coke drinker, we'll try to make sure that we give you a special offer for that. But it's all, how do you help somebody stretch their budget, and how do you let them decide on their terms? And in the past, when I got into this business, people had a shopping list, and they would go and shop once a week, and it would be everything they needed. And if they forgot something, it was like earth-shattering. Today, the average person shops at 3.5 stores, and that's not even including restaurants. And half of food dollars are spent at restaurants. So, the customer always wins, and that's the thing that's so fun about this industry. The industry itself is the same, but the way you connect with the customer changes every day.
Great. Leslie, I want to hear your perspective from the industry at large and also just to define for the audience here what omnichannel experience means a little bit. And what are you seeing as this balancing act between online and in-store? Are we seeing, for example, most people are going online to buy non-perishable and then they still want to go in the store for perishable? Like, what are these trends that we're seeing between online purchasing and delivery to our house versus what we want to see in the stores?
Well, first of all, I think omnichannel is how you want it when you want it. I think that's the easiest way to describe it. It is whatever the customer wants in the best way that's most convenient for them. I don't know that we can actually say that there are specific trends of whether people are buying X online and Y in the stores, because everybody wants to do something a little bit different. And frankly, it changes moment to moment. There are weeks personally when I would never even think of buying online. Then there are other weeks when it would never occur to me to go to the store. So I think I am fairly representative of shoppers, and I think that's the way most of us approach it these days. You know, it's funny, I'll tell the story on myself. In January of 2020, when we had our FMI Midwinter Executive Conference, my State of the Industry presentation included a lot of predictions about what was going to happen with online shopping. And I had these statistics of what it was going to be like by 2025 and felt great about getting up and telling the industry how it was going to look in 5 years. Well, 6 months later, maybe 8, we'd already hit those numbers on online shopping. And so you just never know what's going to affect how consumers are going to behave. And the beautiful thing about this industry is that we have the opportunity to respond as quickly as possible and in whatever way the consumer wants it to happen. So I think we will always have people who are shopping online. We will always have people who want to go in the store. I was one of those people who didn't want anyone else picking my tomatoes. I'm a Southern girl and I wanted to pick my own tomatoes. Well, I got over that pretty darn quick during COVID. And now I've discovered that the pickers in the stores sometimes do a better job than I do. So I think we all just have learned to adjust to the opportunity to meet the customer where he or she is and just to be ready for whatever that turns out to be.
Great, thank you, Leslie. So Jason, so we're seeing this evolving, changing, or recalibrating of the food retail formats of our stores because we're shopping online, the way that we shop, and we were talking last night too, and now that we can work from home some and we can go to the office and our flexibility looks a little different than it did before. You just announced a small format store at Whole Foods, a new store. How are you balancing these different small format stores to meet the customer needs? How are you, where are they going? And what is the purpose of these stores? Because we've seen them in the past. 10 years ago when I worked for the city of Baltimore, we were seeing some of these small format, and some of them didn't work. And now we're seeing them again, but we're seeing them in a new light. So I would love to hear some of your views on why are we seeing these new format stores and what are their purposes?
Yeah, just to share a little bit for the audience. So in March, we made an announcement of a new concept we call Whole Foods Market Daily Shop. And this is a smaller format store, think something like 10,000 square feet, so about a quarter or a third of the size that you might be shopping in a traditional Whole Foods. And where we landed and why we felt the important need to build this concept was we had a bunch of unmet customer need, especially in urban corridors, where we had customers that oftentimes we'd be leaking to other closer nearby retailers or to an online channel potentially. And so what we looked at was where we had this white space and realizing we had areas of the country, especially in these urban corridors, we couldn't add a full-fledged Whole Foods store. It didn't make sense. And so what we've done is really built these as a model to be more of a fill-in trip. And so you'll see our first store is going to be in the Upper East Side in Manhattan. We've got 5 additional stores that will be rolling out after the first one. But the idea is that this will be a fill-in trip for customers and an opportunity for them to shop sort of the flagship or full experience Whole Foods when they sort of need that experience, but to have more grab-and-go options or just onesie-twosie items they need as well. The idea is also that you can get in and out of these stores really quickly. So being a smaller format, a little bit more ease of convenience, I think is going to be a really important part, especially in these urban areas.
Great. Great. So now I want to talk, so that was really our first conversation and theme we've been talking about today was around the customer. What our demands are, our demand for convenience, we want things now, and sort of our views on health in light of COVID. And the next area I want to really discuss is the role of sustainable and resilient food system. And how are we addressing the issues of climate sustainability and resilience? And I just want to start with a few facts and figures. Everyone here knows these facts and figures, but you guys may not in the audience. That a third of greenhouse gas emissions comes from our food system. 70% of it is post-farm, meaning it's from processing, transporting, manufacturing, food loss, waste from the store and the consumer, right? And when we look at how do we start to change and become more resilient and sustainable, we need to look at the whole process, not just agriculture. And I think this is a mistake we've been making. We keep thinking that the issue is on agriculture. Well, agriculture is an issue here in the food system, but it's the full food system. So, Jason, I want to continue to put you in the hot seat here. And tell me about how you, and I loved this in our conversation we had, talk to me how you view the environment as a stakeholder. Speak to me about where the consumer is driving the action and where's Whole Foods moving the agenda.
Yeah. Well, since we opened our first store in 1980, we've really looked at being a stakeholder model. And as Holly mentioned, the environment is one of our stakeholders. And I would say there's sort of a couple of different influences that are taking place here. I think we feel a responsibility as a company to look at and help find ways to protect our environment and to support our food systems for future generations. And at the same time, we're seeing an increase in our customers' both awareness and what they're looking for of us as a retailer and helping look at the environment and the impacts that our products have in the environment, and not just in the last mile, but ultimately throughout the entire supply chain. And so for us, it's been really important to understand, going all the way back to our suppliers, all the different steps in the process, the impacts that we are having on the environment, and what are the steps that we can take to help create a better, more positive impact and bring the transparency to what we're doing as well. And for us, it's always started with climate-friendly agriculture. I mentioned earlier, organics has been part of the company since the very beginning. We are pushing other levers of looking at things like regenerative and really putting a major effort behind that as a company. And we're not only do we continue to lead the way as far as the number of items that we're carrying in this space and bringing the first exclusive branded products in this area, but we're extending it further to look at areas like packaging and the amount of plastics that are showing up in this space, looking at what's happening around sustainable seafood sourcing. We're also looking at the ways by which there's so much waste within our systems, not only in our stores, but going all the way back to the amount of food that's being produced and never even leaves the field in the first place. One of the things that I'm also really part of what we are as part of Amazon's worldwide grocery team is we're part of the broader climate pledge, and we're able to help lead the way in the food space and working with all of our different counterparts, because this is something that isn't going to just be eat onesie twosie answers. This is something that we're going to have to help invent our way, working with all different stakeholders and helping solve the challenges here.
So I want to lift up something you said so all of you can hear it again. A third of the food we produce is lost or wasted. A third, right? And so how do we address this? And so Rodney, how is sustainability good for business and increasing efficiencies? Speak to the work that Kroger is doing to address food waste and also the link to hunger.
Yeah, if you look, for us, our social impact plan, we call it Zero Hunger, Zero Waste. And if you look in the United States, we have enough resources. No one should go to bed hungry tonight. To me, that's just non-negotiable. And when you look at, as Jason said, it's about a third. For us, we're estimating about 40% of food is wasted somewhere between the farmer to us at home. 1 in 7 people will go to bed hungry tonight. And for us, the zero hunger part is if we operate in a market, we're going to do everything we can to make sure no one goes to bed hungry. We committed to providing 3 billion meals on partnering with local food banks. We were able to accomplish that 2 years early. We've committed as part of the merger with Albertsons that we will achieve 10 billion meals by 2030. We also know that we can't do all of it on our own, and we've partnered with outside groups. One of the groups that we partner with is somebody called FarmLink. which is it started out as a couple of college kids during COVID, and I think now they've been able to rescue 165 million pounds of food. But they're using technology to partner with farmers to be able to figure out how to partner with food banks to be able to create a seamless supply chain. And when you think about, how do you take an industry that's not always leading edge on technology, and it's really, how do you partner with that across? And then as a company, we've committed zero waste, and we've reduced our energy footprint by over 40% in the last 15 years. We continue to do that every single year. Every one of our stores participate in making sure that any food that is in a store is getting to somebody that can eat it, and if they can't, we partner with local farmers and people like that to be able to, feed animals with it, or, in some cases actually create, you put it in an aerobic digester, create gas, and use that to actually run one of our facilities.
So you bring up a couple key points. One is you're talking about the connection with community-based organizations to address food waste and meet the needs of the community, and to be able to address people living with food insecurity. And also, Nancy, I want to hear your views on how are you thinking about food waste, and how can it simultaneously address people with food insecurity as well?
Absolutely. I love what you said, Rodney, around no one should go to bed hungry. And also, Jason, your point around it's going to take all of the actors in the food system to come together and fix this problem. And so, a lot of what we've been trying to do is to amplify the reach and the impact of those community-based organizations like food banks, right? If you think about during the pandemic, there were people that could not stand in the line. And so how could you get the food to them? And so we began to launch our home delivery program, where we actually became their last mile. And through that program, we were able to actually treble the reach that the food banks had to getting the food in the hands of the people that needed it most. But in addition to that, we recognize that, if you think about a third of the food that's produced actually becoming waste, how can we, at a much faster rate, divert that food into human consumption? And that's a lot of the work that we've been doing, again, in partnership with community-based organizations. And there's some really awesome organizations out there that I think are leading the way in this. One in particular that comes to mind that we've been partnering with is the Gooder Company, which really has more of a waste management model, but for getting food into the hands of the communities that need it most. And I think that the more that we can build some of these types of models and solutions with the community in mind, right? I think that we'll be much more equipped to resolve the issue from a food insecurity standpoint. No one of us is going to solve this alone. We really do have to work together and take a pulse on where are the people who need the food the most. How do we understand what food is going to go into waste, and before it needs to go into that, how do we divert it to the right people who need it? And then how do we kind of build that resiliency in the food system so that it becomes more consistent and not an ad hoc approach? I think we're all doing different things, but how can we take the best of what everyone's doing and amplify the impact that we can all have in this space? So it's an encouraging area for us to continue to lean into.
So going down this theme, and Leslie, you are coming right now. We've been talking about sustainability, we would talk about food insecurity, we would talk about all these customer needs, but to be honest, we need a resilient food system, right? We are seeing ongoing disruptions that impact our entire food system, including the supply chain. So Leslie, how are food retailers and suppliers learning from COVID and past disruptions to create a more resilient supply chain through technology, logistics, and other key partnerships?
Well, I was going to say in response to some of the comments that Nancy made and Rodney made about food waste, I think what the industry is doing is so impressive, and I think that the big aha for all of us is going to be using technology. And I think technology to do things like Nancy just referred to, help us know more quickly when product is going to no longer be usable, how much time is left for a product, and where is it most needed, and how can we get it there? All of this is something that the retail community has been very focused on. I think for decades, perhaps, the food retail sector has been the largest single contributor to Feeding America, and so this is something that is part of the DNA of the industry, and something that we all feel very passionately about. So I think using technology to try to address that issue is going to be really important. And as we think about supply chain, I think we all learned a lot during the pandemic. I think some of us maybe are thinking that just in time might be better, to be thinking about just in case, because we learned quickly that we have to have backup plans. And I think using technology, using better communication, I think throughout the supply chain has made such a difference. One of the things we've done at FMI is create communities of supplier members and retail members and wholesalers. Importantly, they have an important role in this for those companies that don't self-distribute. But being able to have open lines of communication and to develop systems so that when things are looking like there might be a challenge, that there's a way to address it, rather than the way some companies found themselves in 2020 and 2021 of just literally on the fly trying to figure out how they were going to find products. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out products that were no longer going into restaurants because restaurants were closed, how could we get those retrofitted so that they could be usable in a retail setting? Those are the kinds of connections and communications vehicles that FMI was very involved in at the time. And we've continued to work with companies to help them have those processes in place as they move forward. And I think for companies particularly, we represent everything from single store operators in rural and urban areas to the companies that are represented on this stage. So there are a lot of companies out there who really need the resources, and what we try to do as an industry is support each other and figure out how we can make sure that we're prepared for the next moment that might come.
Okay, Jason, did you have something you want to jump in here?
Well, one of the things I was going to mention earlier as Nancy was talking is our responsibility as businesses is to help determine what are some of the challenges that are creating this food waste. And one of the things that we uncovered and sort of deep dive into this was the lack of refrigerated transportation that existed, and so much food waste, like stuff was being donated, but it couldn't get to where it needed to. And so, one of the things that we ended up standing up with something called Nourishing Our Neighborhoods, which is, across 50 different metros, where we've donated refrigerated vans to community organizations to help make sure that we can get this product where it needs to go. But that's just one example. And so I think it's helping really kind of go down to the next level and get to the root cause of we've got all this food. Why is it not getting to where it needs to? And so I think all of us as whether we're businesses or nonprofits here, government sector, whatever it is, as members and part of this stakeholder system, continue to sort of probe that and say, why isn't this working? Or what do we need to do to make sure we can help solve this problem?
Absolutely.
One more comment that I would make about the way this is happening vis-a-vis food banks and other community organizations is what I see is much more focus on what's being donated as compared to just donate it all. And I think, from a health and well-being standpoint, this is important because I think what we see happening is that the food banks and other community organizations are much more focused on what kinds of food they're bringing in. And the retailers and the wholesalers are much more focused on what kinds of foods they're donating, so that it doesn't just become, whatever was left over from the bakery or, sodas that are getting ready to go out of code or whatever. It's much more of a focus on things that are nutritious and with much more of a health and well-being focus.
And on that point is the reason we partnered with FarmLink, because they were able to connect directly with the farmers. And if you look at produce, is one of the areas that produces a lot of waste. Some of it is because all of us are a little choosy and we like to have produce that looks perfect. And I grew up on a farm, and usually if it doesn't look perfect, it actually tastes better. But the partnership with FarmLink has really been able to address a lot of the things from a produce standpoint to be able to get fresh produce to different Feeding America, food banks across the U.S.
So we have spoken about what the current trends are. We're seeing some current trends and changing trends related to food waste and technology and all of us as customers. And we've talked a little bit about how COVID has disrupted sort of how we think about food, the food retailers, and our own personal consumption. Now, the title of today's session is The Future of Food Retail. But going back to what you said, Leslie, like, you can't predict the future. Like, whatever trends we say doesn't mean anything if some big disruption comes, right? But I'm still going to have you guys put on that visionary hat of what do we need this future to be, right? Like, we can't control it, of course, but what do we want this future of food retail to be? So, Rodney, I'm going to start with you here. And I want you to share with us, like, when you're thinking about employees, not only your employees, but employees across the nation, I know you call them associates, we've talked a lot about all of us, but we haven't talked about the associates, the employees, those who have been there day in and day out during COVID, those who are working as our tellers, those who are stocking our shelves, those who are really the backbone of our food industry. What can you tell me about this future that you envision for employees and their health?
Well, I want to combine both the customer and associate. Technology is going to be an important part of it. And if you realize you're using technology, it's not good enough. And when you think about with our associates, it's supporting them from a technology standpoint, but it's also one of our aspirations is to have the healthiest workforce. And how can we help our associates live a healthier life? And we all know that, half of medical costs are affected by what people eat. Well, if you look at our own associates, how can we support our associates on eating healthier? How can we do that in a way that's easy and transparent? And when you think about tying all those things together, I think it's going to be so much easier for people to find things that are personalized for them, both associates and customers, on being able to eat healthy the way they want to, things they like. And it may be delivered, it may be a shopping list where they do it. It may be us preparing and they just finish cooking at home. But I think it's going to be incredibly exciting to really be helping people be healthier and much easier as well.
So I think our big announcement that we're sharing today is really looking at this blueprint of this. How do we ensure that employers who have employer-sponsored plans can be able to support their employees and associates in a range of food benefits, from food as medicine to different food-related benefits. So would you like to share a little bit about the work that we're going to be embarking on really as of today on this work?
Sure. Yeah, it's exciting to be able to partner with Holly and the Milken Health. We're making an announcement in a few minutes that we will partner on a grant to be able to work and support with our associates, really in terms of how do we help support. If you think about food is medicine or food as medicine, how do we help understand what foods should you provide to somebody? What economics can you do if you think about preventive care and other things like that? And the partnership, Milken is so great at being able to survey everything that's going on in the world. And then, how do we start looking at our own associates? And it's something that we will partner with others as well on. And, for us, it should be a win-win-win. And it'll help people be healthier. We also think it'll help other companies from a healthcare standpoint. How do we have real data to be able to go to say, if somebody is over 55 and they get out of the hospital, you really need to provide 20 meals for them so that decreases the likelihood of them going back in the hospital and things like that. So it really is trying to make sure that food is medicine or food as medicine.
So thanks to Kroger for your commitment. And so next year when we come back, we will be able to unveil a blueprint. Really looking, and it's not just about food retailers and how their associates are receiving these benefits, but just imagine any company, right? Whether it's city government, whether it is other companies, where that food is a part of their health, and it's part of the way that companies are thinking through the wellness of their employees through a food lens and understanding that food is a part of health and healthcare. So I want to talk, so one of the future castings is really looking at the status of our employees, right? How are we as employees and the employees across the nation being healthier through food? Another piece, bringing Nancy, we've been, one thing I hear from you a lot, and I have learned a lot from, is this message I hear over and over about centering the experience on the customer, right? So what is the future of food retail and centering on the customer first? Talk to me about how your views on convenience, health, and equity.
Absolutely. You know, I think that we've got to be able to work backwards from what is the customer's holistic need as it relates to us as food retailers, right? This I would say connection between health and wellness is going to be continually more important, right? And being able to provide, to use your word, the blueprint on how to do that in the easiest and most effective way, I think is going to be our challenge, right? You know, whether it is, hey, I've just come back from a, you know, health scare and now I need to do something like, you know, use the DASH diet. How do I do that? I don't know how to do those things. So I think that food as medicine is going to be at the center of what customers are looking for. And, you know, we have so many different avenues to communicate with our customers, whether it be in the apps, you know, which actually allow them to personalize before they even step into the store, right? You know, being able to take in their preferences for the things that they're looking for and like play back to them how best to engage in our products to help them meet their needs. That is just going to become table stakes. It's not a nice to have anymore. I do think that, you know, we are very uniquely positioned to help shepherd customers in that way, but I do think it also requires us to use an enormous amount of data about what the customer actually is looking for, the way in which they shop, how to guide them through that shopping experience. And so I think that's going to challenge us in a whole new way as well. But it has to be personalized, it has to be relevant, and it has to be holistic in order for it to really add value from a consumer perspective.
So you just touched on one key point of technology, right? What's the future of technology as a tool for transforming food retail, but also to meet our needs? So Leslie, I'm going to want to hear your views on what is the future of AI? You know, and I know that suppliers may be in a different pace than the retailers, but can you share with us like what do you see, understanding everything can change at any point in time? What's the future of AI in food retailing?
Well, I think it's going to be important, certainly in food retail. I think it's already important in food retail. We have recently done a survey of a number of our companies to learn a little more about some of the things that they are engaging AI in within their companies. And what we found is that our companies are all at different places, doing things at different ways and at different places in the continuum. What I think is consistent is they're all interested. They all want to learn more about the opportunities. They want to figure out ways to achieve efficiencies using AI. What I think I also see is that the vast majority of them are using it for back of the house kinds of things currently. There are some that are consumer facing, but that is, I think, more rare and among some of the larger companies. But I think in general, they're using it internally to become more efficient, to try to understand more about their customers, to identify ways that they can, as we move forward in this industry, be as responsive as possible to what their customers are looking for. But I think as everyone gets more comfortable with it, as we understand it better, I think we're going to all be using it a lot more as we move forward.
So thank you. So Jason, when we were talking, I was really enlightened by what you were telling me about what the future of AI could be in shaping the store format in communities and in stores. So can you describe to me sort of this vision of what a future store could look like with AI technology and how it could be more customized by neighborhoods?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll actually start just to build off with some of the things that Leslie was saying. When you think about this supply chain, there's so much inefficiency that we have within our food systems today. And as mentioned many times on this panel, we got razor thin margins on top of it. And so I think this is going to be an opportunity for us to find ways to simplify and bring some of that value back for our customers and some of our other stakeholders, including our team members and our customers. And ultimately, I think if we use these tools appropriately, I think we're going to create whole new exciting experiences for customers. One of the things that we're looking at is how do we bring greater precision to the offerings within our stores based upon what customers are looking for. And for many decades here, retailers have been trying to figure out sort of this whole aspect of local market assortment and what do we do there. And the reality is it's been really tough to get to sort of that holy grail of having the right assortment and the right space allocation and the right price based upon what you need at the store level. But starting to look at this, there's many opportunities by which this technology is going to allow us to do things in this space that we haven't done before. And it's going to help create a more curated experience for our customers. And if we can also use this to take the non-value added activities that our team members are doing today that are mostly administrative and help reinvest that time to more personalized shopping experience. So if you're coming to Whole Foods, how do we have more time for you to connect with one of our certified cheese professionals or our butcher or our fishmonger? That's something we know our customers are looking for. And I think it's going to help make sure that our physical retail stays relevant to what customers are wanting. And at the same time, when they shop our stores, they're going to be able to have what they are looking for each and every time they come.
So in this future of AI in food retail, does this mean that the store in my neighborhood, and the demographic of my neighborhood, my store will look really different because AI will curate based off of the data and the experiences of a shopping of that community, that my store will look different than everyone else's store in different neighborhoods because of AI being able to curate the store experience?
Yes, I believe so. If we take here in Los Angeles as an example, our closest store here is the Beverly Hills store about a mile away. Take what is more of a flagship store in Playa Vista here. They roughly, even though they're very different sizes, they roughly have the same assortment. Playa Vista has more items, but at the end of the day, there might be two different sets of customer attributes is what we're looking here, and different use cases. And so we can further refine the assortment and how much space we're giving different products. And ultimately, this is one of those areas that we can also test and learn and be more quick and rapid to adjust, whether it's things related to seasonality, customer trend and change. I think all of you as customers have probably seen the situation where something goes viral on TikTok, and us as retailers, we have to adjust, and today we're not fast enough. And so I think some of this tooling is going to allow us to better react to customers' needs.
Great, thank you. And Nancy, we just have a few seconds left here, but I wanted to kind of bring you in to share your vision of how AI can be born inclusive for customers. Talk to me about what that means.
Absolutely. I mean, AI is such a nascent tool right now, and we're learning so much about it. But I think to my earlier point around how consumers are evolving and the demographics of our consumers are going to look different in the next future, I think it's important that when we are leveraging our generative AI tools, that we make sure that they are designed in such a way that whatever we build is inclusive and it's covering the unique and evolving needs of the consumer. And that has to be an intentional act that we are taking as food retailers to ensure that that happens. And so I think it is a beautiful tool in that we really have the ability to learn more about our customers and to curate and customize to meet their needs. We just have to balance that with making sure that, again, it's very much inclusive and supportive of the unique needs of the consumer.
One of the things I love about this is it just further contributes to the role that food retailers have as being the cornerstones of their communities. We saw during COVID, nobody went anywhere except maybe to the grocery store. And so that became a big outing. It was going to the store. And I think being able to be as responsive and as curative as AI will allow is going to really enhance that role even more.
So thank you. So we're coming to the conclusion. And just so you know, I didn't need to make the announcement of use a QR code to ask questions because I've been getting a ton of questions from all of you. So that's why I didn't have to announce that. I've been threading your questions throughout the conversation. So I do appreciate all the questions that you've been asking the panelists through me today. So to conclude, we have really seen in this conversation this transformation on food retail. And the reality is it's never going to stop transforming because we're always changing, our environment's changing, our desires, our health is changing, and the retailers by nature are adapting to us, and they're doing it through data technology and soon someday more AI. So thank you so much for being here to talk about the future of food retail. Appreciate it.
I can see clearly now the rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in my way. Gone are the dark clouds that had me blind. It's gonna be a bright, 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 sunshiny day. Gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. I think